and welcome to the How to Market Your Horse Business podcast. I'm so glad you're joining me here today. My name is Denise Alvarez, and I get to host you here on a regular basis. And before we dive into today's topic about building a positive team culture, I will very quickly introduce myself, and then we will dive right in. Now, as I said, my name is Denise, and through my business, Storm Lily Marketing, I get to help dream-chasing horse business owners like yourself to see clearly through the marketing overwhelm and create a clear message and cohesive plan for your social media, website, and email marketing, one that will turn your online audience into your customers. Now, I do that specifically through one-on-one coaching, as well as website design and website copywriting, and education such as this podcast, and I have some online learning resources as well. The heart behind everything that I do here is to help you as an equestrian entrepreneur be out in the barn or the arena or behind the camera lens doing what it is that you love in the equine industry. And that's why here on this podcast, you can expect a mix of step-by-step strategies, essential how-tos, and entrepreneurial mindset shifts that will help you not only see what's possible for your horse business, but I'm also here to guide you through that process so you can make it happen. Now, as I said, today we are talking about building a positive team culture. We talk a lot on this podcast about how to grow your horse business. So what do you do when part of your growth process involves hiring team members? Or if you're someone who already has team members in place, how do you make sure they're the right people and that they're helping to build the business that you have a vision for and that they have the same heart for your customers and clients and horses that you have? Now, we talked a bit about this in my podcast interview with Amy Bond in episode number 140. I'll, of course, make sure to link to that in today's show notes, which will be stormlily.com/147 for episode number 147. Amy talked in that interview at length about hiring team members, my goodness, friends, about hiring team members and the difficulties sometimes that you encounter when you're wanting to hire people that line up with the culture that you are building. And I think that what she had to say there lines up perfectly with what today's guest will share with you about how you can be intentional in how you build a positive team culture in your business. So if you've ever made a hire that didn't work out, or maybe walked into managing an existing business where you had to manage a team that was not exactly all on the same team, if you know what I mean, then you know how important it is to cultivate a team culture in your business that really it seeps the values that you stand for, meaning when people encounter your team, they have a very clear picture of what your business stands for because you've hired the right people and you've built a team culture that reflects that. And so I'm excited for you to meet today's guest, Kaitlin Christopherson, CEO of GSS The Agency. As you will hear from Kaitlin, she's actually not the owner of the business that she's helping to build, which I know for many of you will be different because most of you here are entrepreneurs building your own business. However, as the CEO of GSS The Agency, Kaitlin is the person responsible for the team environment and culture that she is building as they serve their equestrian clients. Now, she is filled with practical advice and examples in this episode of how you can intentionally build a positive team culture inside of your business. So whether you have an existing team or you're about to hire your first team member, this conversation with Kaitlin is for you. Let's dive in. All right, Kaitlin, thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast. I truly am grateful for your gift of time. Thank you.
Hi, Denise. Thank you so much for having me. This is an honor. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm thrilled. So I'm really excited because what we're going to talk about today is actually not something we've really talked about here on the podcast. So I'm excited for you to share a little bit more about team building and culture. But before we get there, I want my audience and honestly myself, selfishly, I want to hear more about your story. So I would love for you to share a little bit of your journey, how you became where you are now, which is the CEO of Grand Slam Social, recently renamed, I know, GSS The Agency, which I'm sure you'll tell us a little bit about that. So tell me a little bit more about what you're doing now and how you got to this place.
Well, first of all, I'm so blessed to be in the place where I am. I truly get to live out my dreams. Young me would have either said I wanted to be a veterinarian or I wanted to do something with horses and marketing. After I realized how much chemistry and math was involved in in being a veterinarian, I was all
Same, actually.
I was more of the bookish kid. I loved to read. I loved, I did Future Business Leaders of America, and I did the job interview. They actually had competitions for job interview, and I did debate. And so I was much more kind of communications minded in that aspect. So I'm so fortunate to be where I am, and it's been an incredible journey. It started again from a very young age. I loved horses, and I knew that someday when I grew up, my parents, wanted me to go and kind of go the corporate route, but I was pretty adamant that I wanted to try to find a career where I could marry my passions together in a professional and a personal way. So I went to school for liberal arts. I studied liberal arts. I just wanted to have like a very well-rounded degree and be able to communicate with people and speak and understand, all the various aspects of the world and different cultures. And then after that, I decided to move to Lexington, though I had never Lexington, Kentucky. Which
Yeah.
I
From
had
where? Where were you moving from?
so I grew up in Texas. So I'm from Texas almost all of my life. I went to college at Loyola University in New Orleans because it was a beautiful liberal arts school in a beautiful city. Took a little bit of a break from horses during college to just really focus on the college experience, studied abroad in France a few times, and then had the opportunity to move to Lexington. I had never been there, but I, of course, knew what Lexington was and what it meant to the horse world. So I thought, well, if there's anywhere that I can kind of kickstart this dream career that I have in my head, it's probably Lexington. So moved to Lexington and just started networking and taking a few odd jobs, working at the thoroughbred sales. I didn't really know anything about thoroughbred racing other than the Kentucky Derby. But started, taking jobs where I could get them networking, and eventually that led to a position. It wasn't even a public position. It was somebody ended up referring me to Elliot Walden at Windstar Farm. And Windstar Farm is one of the largest players in the thoroughbred game. They, at the time, they were standing over 23 stallions that included Tisnow, Speightstown, Distorted Humor, like truly legendary. And so I secured an interview there, and I think I went in for 3 interviews. And to be honest, I did not know much about thoroughbred racing. Of course, I was trying to learn as quickly as I could. Um, but I just impressed them, I guess, with my, interview capabilities and just my ideas. I came up with some off the wall ideas that I presented to them about how to market the farm and the stallions and their training center.
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting that
So
job.
this was a marketing position you were interviewing for.
Yes, it was. Yes. So this was for their in-house marketing director.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I won that opportunity, and it honestly kind of launched everything. That was the year that American Pharoah was running and won the Triple Crown, and we actually stood his stallion, Pioneer of the Nile. So while American Pharoah was doing all these amazing things, I could just go out to the stallion barn and see. There's some amazing pictures of Pioneer of the Nile and me. We did a photo shoot after he won the Triple Crown, and we got the Sports Illustrated with American Pharoah on the cover, and the grooms were reading it, and he was looking at it. We had to put a little peppermint in there.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun.
It was just an amazing experience, and again, a great way to marry some big ideas, big creative ideas into the horse world.
Yeah.
That really launched everything. After being there for about, well, almost 2 years, I did decide to give the more corporate world a try. That was a wonderful job. I did decide, and I went and did marketing and social media for a NetJets company out of Cincinnati, and just kind of exploring, okay, this was kind of the decision-making time, right? Do I want to stay in horses, or do I want to perhaps pursue something a bit more regular, I suppose? And I loved that. I loved that. I was, they're super happy for a year. They were actually really sad when I left. However, I left because I got the opportunity from Grand Slam Social. We had met during the 2015 Breeders' Cup when I was still working for WinStar, and they were there independently contracting for Breeders' Cup social media. So they, three of the girls who were there ended up forming an LLC, starting a company, saying we're independent contractors, but let's try to see if there's something here. 2015, still kind of relatively early days in social media now when you look back on it. And after about a year, they said, we need our first full-time employee and we want it to be you. And it was a very hard decision, but it seemed like something I couldn't pass up. So I took the position, and I celebrated 7 years in July with GSS. And yeah, at this point, I am the CEO and about to become a managing partner.
That's amazing. Congratulations on that. That's
Thank
really,
you.
yeah. And so obviously you've had a journey and you guys have built a team along the way. So it started with the three, but now you have, what does that team look like? What's that structure look like?
Now we've got about 6 people that we work with regularly, 4 full-time people, and then we've got several in-house on retainer contractors, as well as junior account coordinators who work for us part-time and hourly. So yeah, on our weekly status calls now, we're about 7.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's fantastic. And then now one part that I didn't, if you said it, I missed it. Growing up, like what discipline were you involved in, or what did that kind of look like for you and horses? What did that part of that story look like?
I come from a completely non-horsey family. I still don't know where it came from. And I think sometimes my mom still thinks maybe she'll grow out of this horse phase.
Yes, I've heard that from other people before. Yeah.
So I don't know where the passion came from, but I mean, there are photos, me on horses at 6 months. I'm sure my mom now was like, oh my gosh, what was I doing?
So as early as you can remember. And then how did you get you riding lessons at some point, or you had friends?
I begged. No, I begged. I actually went and worked for a local riding facility that specialized in rehoming ponies, or not rehoming ponies, but giving ponies second chances as kids riding horses. And so I volunteered there every single day for, well, as much as I could over a period of 2 years.
Yeah.
And eventually, after doing that, my dad was like, okay, I think she's serious about this. So he got me a horse out of a pasture, from a friend. Didn't really know anything. And the next thing I knew, we had a couple of horses in our front yard. I was the one taking care of all of them. And, it was not super traditional, but I love
that. Yeah.
And then I got involved in 4-H and immediately got hooked on the competition side of things. So I was a 4-H kid. Growing up, yeah, I did showmanship, Western pleasure, hunter under saddle, barrel race, speed events, all of those events. So I was very much involved in 4-H, which I still credit a lot of my knowledge of how to handle meetings and lead meetings and, take minutes, things like that, to 4-H. So yeah, that was kind of my my front yard of horses.
I love that. Everybody's just so unique. So I had a guest, I'm trying to think by the time this publishes what the timeline will be, but at least a couple of months ago. And she had never even sat on a horse until she was like, oh, I'll get the age wrong, but mid-30s. And now she's an equestrian business owner. So like every journey is so unique. And so that's why I wanted people to hear that part of your story, because that's an important piece of it. And everybody's is very different and unique. So I love that. That's so fun. And I love that your family supported it, even though they didn't understand it. That's a gift.
It's still okay. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So now, as I mentioned, I've had other guests on the podcast before, and honestly, the majority of the time, not always, they are the founders of their companies. And so for you, this is a unique part of your story because you got to come in and be a part of a team and then really help to cultivate that team as you've moved into the role of CEO, which how long have you been in that role, Kaitlin?
been in the role of CEO for about 8 months. Before that, I was COO and head of operations for 3 years.
Okay, fantastic. So tell me a little bit about your view of team building, given that experience that you kind of were brought in to kind of help build the team versus doing it as the founder.
Right. Well, coming in at the ground floor, I've been through all of the positions, right? So I have a deep understanding of pretty much every position that we have in the company right now. And honestly, it was something that attracted me to the position to get in the company at, its kind of infancy and to help grow it because I saw that as being a really important career calling for me personally. Um, so going back to the very beginning, I would say when I came in, I had a very strong idea of what I felt the culture should be like. And I was very fortunate that the co-founders that I was working for had the same idea.
Okay.
And when they saw that I was wanting to really kind of take this and run with it, they let me. And so throughout the years, again, having experience in all the various positions and, all of the things that are required of an account director or a junior account director, pretty much even some creative, which I'm not the creative guru, but, I can do it. And I've done a little bit of everything, the HR. I mean, now as CEO, I have to, right? So I discovered though that I enjoyed that while I was doing it. And really, to me, it became pretty obvious that there were a few very important things that made our team special. And that was one, choosing the right people from the beginning. So making sure that anybody who came in was a culture fit and in that they were highly motivated, detail oriented, team oriented. You can't really change the way people are wired so much in that way. So if you're bringing people into the team that you are kind of hoping that, well, maybe someday they can get to this level or find this motivation within themselves, or this self-awareness, that's not exactly something you can teach. So I noticed that was really important. I also noticed that in this is such a unique environment that we're in. I noticed it was people who were passionate, right? The same way I was. So it's not that I was necessarily in it for the money, although of course I wanted to make a good living because I have horses. Horses cost money. So that was always part of the deal. But also something that I'm very passionate about and that I knew I wanted to wake up every day and, be excited, not go to when I lived in Cincinnati, there are a lot of Fortune 500 companies and they had amazing positions and benefits but to be marketing soap or something was just not exactly what I saw myself doing. And so surrounding ourselves with people within the company who felt that same way, right? This was also a passion. This was not just a means to an end. And then also really finding people again who are going back to the very beginning, Elliot Walden took a chance on me because I was not I didn't grow up in thoroughbred racing. I was not super knowledgeable about the handicapping or the racing or any of that, but he saw that I had creativity and that I had drive and he took a chance on that. And so also finding people who mimic that and who have that within themselves. Um, so not being afraid to take chances on people that show the right qualities, right?
Yeah.
And so I've had a lot over my 7 years with GSS, I've had a lot of experience to look at and draw upon. It's something I'm very proud of is that we do have a very low turnover rate, but I have had the opportunity to work with a lot of different people, hire a lot of different people for, part-time contractor vendors, things like that. So I've still gotten a lot of experience in the people management and I would suppose kind of like the psychology of hiring into the team.
Okay, so much. I'm going to try to pull out some things because that was so good, and I know those listening are going, "Okay, I want to sit on some of those for a second." Okay, so I know typically I lead into the question of what are some of the practical ways you do that. I think you've done you've already given us some very practical things to think about. So in terms of hiring for strengths and self-awareness and knowing the culture. So I want to back up a bit and kind of dive into some of those, if that's okay. So number one, let's define for those listening, because you and I think are kind of the same breed, that we're like learning and love business. And like, so team culture, like those things are fun. Some business owners are more like not prone to do that. And so for those that are listening that are saying, this is why I'm on this podcast, because that's not my nature. Let's define first, when you talk about team culture, how would you give a basic definition of that, Kaitlin?
Basic definition for me of team culture is how your team works together day in and day out to produce a superb result, while managing everybody's strengths and weaknesses together.
Okay. All right. That's good. And I know I just put you on the spot. That was not like on the things that I
No.
So that's not like you need to meet my approval. That's so helpful. So a very like basic definition. I wish I could remember who said this, because I am sure it gets credited to somebody, and I'll try to find that. But essentially, and I would love to hear your feedback on this. When I think of culture, I think of like what's rewarded and what's maybe disciplined. You know what I mean? Like, because ideally, yes, we want a superb result. But I think there can also be negative team cultures, right? Where like things that are rewarded that are maybe not going to give us that end result we're looking for, but it's haphazard, because a lot of times building that culture is not intentional. And so, what happens is people reward the end result and don't think about the means. And the means is a lot of the culture of how that happens, right? So given that case, we're saying in this podcast, we're talking about how do you build a positive team culture? And so what you just defined to me would be like, that's a positive team culture. I want to be a part of that, right? So my first practical takeaway for those listening would be to think about intentionally what your team culture is, like what you want to reward, what you value. Because I could even hear, as you were talking, Kaitlin, the things that you guys value, the creativity, the passion, right? The willingness to get up and do what's done. Like I would guess those are some markers. Do you guys have at GSS, the agency, like specific cultural markers that you've created? And I'm asking, like, if the answer is no, that's totally fine. I'm just curious.
No, we absolutely do. And it's actually in our marketing tagline, inspired marketing that drives impactful results. So those two words, inspired and impactful, when we were going through the rebrand, which I initiated, and I told the co-founders, I said, it's time, right? We're more than a social media agency. We are a full service marketing agency. And that's kind of what that. But when we were going through that, when I was guiding us through it, I wanted it to be very meaningful. And so the two words inspired and impactful, I would say are, markers that kind of live in my head on a daily basis. So like, we want the team to always feel inspired. We want our clients to feel inspired by our work. I want to feel inspired by my job, and that's how I want my people to feel. And then also impacting. We want to have an impact. Whether it's not just through successful marketing, but for example, thoroughbred racing, yes, there are negative associations with thoroughbred racing, just like any industry, right? We're coming out of the Olympics and we're kind of seeing a little bit of fallout from there in horse sports. So it's moving forward. Horse sports are not necessarily going to be an easy industry to market in, but we want to bring positivity. We want to shine light into all of the good that's going on. And something that I always say is it's the people and the horses that I constantly meet that keep me in the sport. Because if you focus on the negative, you're just going to see the negative. But there's so many positive things. And that's what we want to do. We want to storytell. We want to have an impact on all of the positive stories within the horse sport world. So in addition to having inspired, impactful as kind of like marquee words for the agency, and also like what we live on a day-to-day basis, I think having everybody on again, and it goes back to choosing the right people, right? So the energy that you feel on a daily basis, or when you have a meeting with the team, you want to feel, and again, it goes back to that word being inspired. You want to feel inspired by your teammates, and by your leaders and by everybody. And I think something that's really important for leaders, you kind of alluded to earlier, is if they are saying, well, maybe I'm the CEO, but I'm not exactly, I don't know what I'm passionate about as far as team culture, or maybe I don't really care. I just want a good result. You have to put people in the right places that can handle that and who have a passion and a drive to get to that point. So acknowledging everybody's strengths and weaknesses and playing up to the strengths is something that we tried to do. We tried to recognize in people and honor that. And then also just excellent client service. We are in a client service business. And at the end of the day, we are selective about the clients that we work with, because even with our clients, it's very much a partnership, right? So yes, we want to make your social media and your marketing absolutely outstanding. And we've proven that we can do that with Mar Thoroughbred Club, Breeders' Cup, Phasing Tipton. We have a lot of track record there, but it's a partnership. And so we want to invite clients who are working from that place of inspiration and impacting, their respective businesses in a positive way. We want to bring them into the team too. So it's woven throughout.
Okay, I'm so glad that you said that, because I'm literally writing notes as I talk, because I don't want to forget to lead you to a couple different places that came up as you were talking. So one, we're hiring. Okay, for those listening, all right, I'm gonna backtrack and recap, just because I like to keep everybody on the same track of where we're going. So for those listening who are saying, okay, I'm starting out, I'm building my team from the ground level, and I really want to do it intentionally, these are some of the steps you're going to follow. So obviously, you're going to first decide what culture means to you. You're going to identify some cultural markers for your own organization. And let me just remind those of you listening, you are a team of one, you're still an organization. So one of the previous podcast episodes that you've had, Kelly, which I know that you know from Avenue Equestrian, she talked about being a CEO. For those of you listening saying, Denise, I'm only one and I'm just hiring a part-timer, that's okay. You can still do the ground level work right now, so that part-time person that you hire, they may eventually become like Kaitlin and become your right-hand person, or, be running the things based on the culture that you have created from the get-go. So define those cultural markers, and then you're going to hire based on culture as a filter, which I feel like is what you were just saying. But I love that you brought in the fact that you're hiring employees and you're also hiring your clients, and that culture fit has a lot to do with the clients that you bring in as well. I actually have a marketing client. She and I were talking about this, just about the idea of, she was actually relieved when somebody left her barn, because that was not the culture she was trying to build. And the culture in her barn is set very much by the clients that are walking up and down the barn aisles and who are at the shows. Like, that has a lot to do with the culture as well. So your clients and your employees need to be filtered through that idea of culture. Do you want to speak to that a little bit more, Kaitlin? Because I kind of jumped in there, but I wanted to highlight that for those listening.
Yes, I do. And I want to say, because I feel like some people might be listening saying, okay, well, I'm not at that point. I can't be choosy, right? About who I hire. I want the business. And to that, I will say, so a couple of things. I'm not saying that we have never had, clients or bad experiences. I mean, that's just part of it. It's business, right? And you learn as you grow. And sometimes you do have to do things to keep the lights on. I would just say, know your hard nose, right? So what is absolutely not tolerated? What can you work with? And, hopefully lead them to a better place. Maybe they'll be a better client because of you in the future. But what are your absolute hard no's? And then just in the end, I think you have to be willing to separate the money out of it. So maybe you don't turn a profit for 6 months to a year because you just can't find the right clients. But then you should be focusing on other aspects of the business. Okay, what am I doing in my business that I'm not finding the right clients? Is it my marketing? Is it me? Do I need to invest in other areas? That's kind of part of being a self-aware CEO or leader. And even if you're a team of one, and figuring out, okay, well, maybe my strengths are not recruiting clients, so I need to find somebody who can do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would say to people who are like, well, it doesn't apply to me because I'm just one person. Yeah, being selective about clients, being selective. And again, it's like when you kind of, what is one thing that I would suggest to people, even if you're a business of one, choose 3 pillar words, right? Like, or anywhere from 2 to 5 pillar words of what you want your business to exemplify. So when people look at your business or around your business, what is the energy that they are like feeling from that? And so again, for GSS, I would say inspired and impactful. For your business, obviously you have to decide what that is, even if it's just you, and then move forward based off of that.
Okay, that's such a good question. For those of you who are struggling to define your culture, is what do you want your business to exemplify? I love that. Or like, what do you want people to experience when they walk in the door? What do you want?
Exactly.
So I've heard it said again. I wish I could give better credit to where I hear things, but I listen to so many different podcasts and read different books. It's hard to always remember it. But I like this idea of kind of like the taste in your mouth when they walk away. You know what I mean? Like that feeling helps to define that culture. Now
And that's
let's
any equestrian business. I just wanted to say, just any equestrian business, whether you're a barn, you're a farrier, you are a body worker, you're a marketing, you're a tack shop, whatever it might be, every business has a personality, whether you like it or not. And even if you're a team of one, then the personality is you, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. Yes, the personality. I love that. So going back to the idea of building a team culture. So we're going back to like the people that you're meeting with. So you talked about contractors and freelancers, and you have paid employees. Tell me about a little bit of that process, because I think many of my listeners will be in similar situations where they have some part-time employees, they have some full-time, they may be hiring contractors and freelancers. Do you still view culture through that same lens of everybody that is kind of a piece and part of your team?
Right. And so just side tip, if you are a small business, vendors, contractors, part-time is a wonderful way to go. We do have people, we have a few incredible full-time employees that we have amazing benefits packages for and everything. But when you're starting out, that can be a really big expense to take on, a big overhead expense. So yes, so your vendors and your contractors are just as important to your business, not only because are they potentially, or they should be some cost savings to you to help deliver your services, but they're also going to be an extension of your business, right? And we have some that operate essentially, our clients might not know if they're full-time or if they're a contractor or part-time because they operate within our agency. So yes, it's so important that the contractor, vendor, anybody, intern that you're bringing into your company or aligning with, they need to be on the same wavelength as you as far as values and the end goals and how to get there.
Okay, that's so, so good. I appreciate you diving into that because I agree 100%. And I think that sometimes, again, people forget that that's an extension of the business. That's part of your team. Their reflection, when you're working with them or they're doing work on your behalf, they're a reflection of your business. And so
Absolutely.
keeping that in mind. Okay, Kaitlin, so talk to us a little bit about just the practical ways that you have built a positive team culture there at GSS The Agency. Like, what are some practical things that you've done that maybe our listeners can take and apply in their own business?
Mm-hmm. So have 5 steps, and it's again, it goes back to number 1, choosing the right people. So one thing that I have noticed within our hiring system is that routinely the people that we hire that have the greatest impact and that we love working with, they are the people who have found us, not the opposite way. So I get a lot of resumes. We get Instagram messages. Hey, I've been following you. I love what you're doing. If you ever have anything available, please let me know. That's, I would say, 80 to 90% of our most successful people have come through that pipeline. So that's a good first step to choosing the right people, right? Because they already know your business. They're demonstrating interest. So keep that in mind. Motivate through understanding, demonstration, and goals. it's a little, we're coming into kind of like a modern leadership era where we're kind of leaving the motivate by like fear and hunger. I think it's
yeah,
fear, hunger, and money or something is a little old school now. And my fiance, he's a chemical engineer and he's in leadership, and he's dealing with this, even though he's in a very still kind of like old school male dominated plant environment. It's the tides are shifting everywhere. So you have to motivate, you have to be understanding, you have to understand your team and show empathy. And then you have to demonstrate, right? So you have to be you have to demonstrate the values as a leader that you want your employees to act as workers within your company, or as professionals within your company. You want them to reflect what you're reflecting as a leader. So in order to do that, you have to first reflect in a positive way. And then goals. And I think this also goes back to choosing the right people, because we choose people who are very motivated and goal oriented. And so it's not that difficult to get them to a space where, okay, these are the business goals, and here are your goals to help us achieve these business goals. And because they're goal oriented people, they want to be successful, they're driven. It's very easy. We don't have to convince them, right, to go and achieve those goals. I think I touched a bit on this with empathy and understanding, but showing some vulnerability, right? The team is there for everyone. And this goes a bit back to the modern leadership. In the past, it was a bit, show no weakness, always stiff upper lip. And I think there is something to be said. It's a middle ground, right? And it's something that I have learned as a leader, but also I learn a lot from leaders that I've worked for, that I still look up to today, or mentors, podcasts, right? All of those avenues you can learn from. And of course, you don't want to be, the sky's always falling, because nobody, no employee is going to be motivated by that.
Right.
But we are, CEOs, leaders, we're all people too. And we all have lives, and we have stresses. And if we have horses, then we probably have, equine stresses quite a bit. And I think you can share, it's okay to share that, because that's also what a team is. A team is not just one person carrying everybody. A team is individuals coming together to support each other for a common goal. So that includes you, right? You're part of the team. Just because you're the leader of the team does not exclude you from feeling and acting and going through what any other person on the team might go through. So acknowledging strengths, and always to be working on weaknesses of your team members and yourself as well. And again, it goes back to hiring the right people who are self-aware. If they're self-aware, and if they are a well-rounded person, they're going to want to be doing this themselves anyways, whether it's in their personal or professional life. So acknowledging strengths. I mean, I love doing praise. I love giving shout outs to team members. I love doing surprise and delights. There are a lot of ways, right, that you can just show, and it feels good to everybody. I still love when people say, hey, you're doing a really good job. It doesn't, you really get to a point in your career, no matter what you're doing, where you don't value positive feedback. Mm-hmm. Making sure that you are doing that and giving that feedback. And then the weaknesses, to say, okay, I realize that this is not exactly what comes second nature to you, or what you're most passionate about in this role. So what can we do to help that? Can we get extra training, extra support? Like how can we help that? Because we, as a well-rounded person, you have to be working to not overcome, but just strengthen weaknesses, right? Mm-hmm. And then allowing team members to grow, even if it's stressful. And that includes you as the leader. You have to allow yourself to grow. You have to, and that might, that's probably going to be it's probably definitely going to be uncomfortable, right?
Right. Yes. The most growth is not exactly super comfortable. Yeah.
You're going to be scared out of your depth, a little unsure, stressed out. But I think again, yeah, just as you said, growth is not always comfortable, but being in those positions can mean you're growing, having those feelings, right? So, and that goes the same for your team. Part of being a good leader is developing your team professionally, and that means growing. So we can't, as every business evolves every single year, you're constantly trying to roll with the punches that may or may not be out of your control. And so in handling all of that is about being is about personal and professional growth so that you can adapt and be flexible and overcome those challenges. And that's all part of growth.
Yeah. And especially for those listening who are like, look, I just got into this because I loved horses, right? Like that, I hear that a lot. Like, I'm good with the horses. I'm not good with the marketing. I'm not good with the people. But my heart and my goal is always to help them build a sustainable horse business. And so part of that sustainability is going to be allowing yourself to be uncomfortable and grow into the leader so that it can be sustainable. Because if you just choose to put your head down and do the work and ignore the fact that you are growing, ignore the fact that you're hiring people to join you, but just because you feel like you can't do anymore, so you just bring somebody in. You're not going to build a business that you're going to enjoy, and that's not sustainable, So being willing to embrace that leadership role is really so key in doing each of these other things that you have encouraged them to do. So good. I really appreciate the practicals. I have a practical question for you. You said surprise and delight. What are some of the ways you do surprise and delight?
So I will do anything from, merch we love. I mean, I love company swag. So company swag, just doing anytime that we're together in person. I love taking everybody out for super nice team dinner, going to get, our nails done. So bonding time that way. It can even be extra bonuses, recognizing somebody's birthday, sending them flowers for that. There's such a variety of ways that it's just something nice and unexpected. And again, it's nice for everybody to receive. If I receive flowers unexpectedly,
It doesn't want to be valued. Yeah, they value your contribution.
So, it's kind of like treat people the way you would want to be treated. If you've been in a really rough stretch and you feel like you've been grinding and, you get a little extra money in your bank account or something like that. When we were in Sonoma, I was super grateful to my employee who drove the 6 hours both weeks to come and join me. And so we went on a little shopping trip at Sonoma Horse Park. She's a horse girl too. So, we got some breeches and some things like that.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay. Before I let you go, because I know you have gifted much of your time. I have another very, again, practical middle. When you talked about markers, like for me at Storm Lily Marketing, it's very much about giving people practical help. So you talked about, because you guys aren't always in person, right? So building the virtual team. So you guys meet regularly. So whether people are virtual or in person and building their team, there's something to be said about the need to meet. Now, sometimes meetings happen too often, and sometimes they happen not often enough. What is your take on the need, practically speaking, to meet, whether it's in person or virtually, as an entire team, and the importance of that for building your culture intentionally?
So you're absolutely right. And about meeting too much. First, let me say that. However, I don't feel overall that is the trend in the horse industry. I would say it probably skews toward the latter, where people are not meeting frequently enough to discuss priorities and short-term goals, long-term goals. And I see this right even in riding barns where I'm a part of. I mean, I think goal setting and just having these, again, like marker moments, right, where you can all gather together and look at the goals that are upcoming and whatnot. Overall, it doesn't happen enough in the horse industry. So I would say that it needs to be something regular, and it needs to be something that is you have an agenda for.
Yeah.
So, and an agenda doesn't have to be 10 bullet points of things, but it needs to say, we need to discuss X, Y, and Z. And so when you're doing it remotely, we keep it the same time every single week. And then we also have check-ins, of course, whenever is needed. And then if you're if you're working with your team, it's a bit different because you're around them all the time and you can just kind of pop in and say, hey, can we talk about this real quick? But so maybe you need the regular meetings less frequently, but you still need meetings on the calendar that everybody knows are coming up that they can prepare for and say, well, I know this is a goal, but here's something that I see that might interfere with us reaching that goal, et cetera.
Yeah. Or even like backing up to the part of setting goals, like, right. And being clear about the goals, because oftentimes the business owner, when you're an equestrian entrepreneur, oftentimes you're the one setting the goals and then people just are working to work, right? Sometimes they don't really know what the goals are.
That is such a good point. They're goals, they're in your head. They make sense to you, right? This is what I'm trying to achieve here, but you have to communicate that. And we all know that horse people are not always the best communicators.
Right, exactly. And I will say this too, coming from somebody who has worked for an entrepreneur before I became one, I know. And so getting to just kind of hear the team mumblings, right? But it's sometimes, so for those entrepreneurs who are listening, who are trying to build a team, let me just remind you that if the goal is only to make a certain amount of money, then people are going to begin to feel that they're just there to help make you money. But if you can connect the goals to how it impacts your team's life and how, like you talked about impact, how it's impacting the industry as a whole or your community as a whole, if you can make the work that they're doing really connected to something beyond just a dollar amount that everybody's working towards, that will really be part of that motivating factor that you talked about before as you're setting those goals.
Absolutely.
For you, you're going to be super motivated to hit that because you know what it means to your bank account. Unless you're super clear what it means to their bank account, they just feel like they're working to grow your bank account. Like that's just the reality of it. And that's not going to build a positive team culture because as I said, what happens is there's mumblings, right? They won't maybe say it to you, but then the culture is going to be like set again in a different
allowed for
way.
resentment to grow.
Yes.
Because if you're unclear on your goals, and I think it's that way with any relationship, right? Like, what are we trying to achieve here? Well, if it's one-sided or you're not clear on it, then nobody else knows, and that just the uncertainty allows for, like you said, rumblings, resentment to kind of grow and be introduced into the factors of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Kaitlin, thank you so much. This has been so good. I asked a lot of questions, I know, and I appreciate you just like letting me spitfire them to you. But is there anything else regarding building a positive team culture that you're like, if those who are listening walk away, I want to make sure they know this one thing. Is there anything like that you want to end with or share?
Absolutely. I would say it's to remember that we are all human and that everybody has strengths and weaknesses. Everybody goes through phases of life. This is something that, we're dealing with right now. And we are kind of always dealing with it when you're an entrepreneur, but don't forget to give yourself grace as well as your team. And I think that can go a long way towards building a very sustainable, welcoming, fruitful culture for you and your business.
That's so good. I so appreciate you saying that because yes, after this conversation, what could easily happen is people saying, oh, I'm not doing enough or I have failed at these things. And then not giving themselves grace to even start. So I really appreciate your perspective on that. That's why you're a great leader, obviously. Thank you, Kaitlin. Now, I also would love for you to tell everybody where they can find you. So, of course, I'll put all of these links in the show notes, which for this episode will be stormlily.com/147 for episode 147. But go ahead and tell those listening who are pulling out their phone and want to connect with you.
So LinkedIn, I am Kaitlin Christopherson. And on Instagram, I am at the Kaitlin C. I am getting married next March, so my name will be changing. However, everybody will know about it, and I'm still going to keep my maiden name in there somewhere. So yeah, but for now,
fine.
For now, yes, I would absolutely love if any part of this podcast inspired you or resonated with you. Please reach out to me, DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn is a great way to get in touch with me and hopefully start a conversation.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you so much, Kaitlin. I appreciate you and I wish you the very best. You guys
Thank you so much, Denise. It was an honor.
All right, friends, I hope that you are walking away ready to take action inside of your horse business. If we're new friends, you may not know this, but old friends do know. My heart on the podcast is absolutely to give you practical, actionable marketing advice for your horse business. But beyond that, my heart is for you to take action because I know that that is the difference maker. So that being said, I want you to write down, send me a message on Instagram, send Kaitlin a message. Somehow I want you to document the one thing you are going to do and begin to implement in your horse business that's going to help you build a positive team culture. All right. Now, of course, the highlights of this conversation will be on the show notes. So if you head to stormlily.com/147 for episode 147, you will find the highlights there. Now, before you go, I want to share with you one thing that I have as a resource that's going to help you as you are building your equestrian business. Now, some of you are at a place where you're building a team and some of you are not. But what I know for all of you is that you're building a business. And part of building a business means that you have to make money, right? And so I want to give you a free guide that's going to give you some ideas for how you can make money online. Now, of course, this has grown exponentially in the past few years and the opportunities are endless. But inside of this guide, what I want to do is open your eyes to some possibilities that may help you to extend the reach of your business, to help more people, to get in touch with more of the right people that could learn from you and experience working with you in a new way. So if you'll go to stormlily.com/money, I have the free guide that is called the Horse Business Owner's Guide to Making Money Online. And you're going to find 5 specific ways that you can get started. You're going to find some real life examples for everyone that I'm giving you, some strategies that you can apply in your horse business, and then of course, some tips and advice to get you started. Now, you may already be in this journey into marketing your business online and building online revenue, but if you are not, or if you want to see what other ideas are out there or other ways you can explore, then I would invite you to grab this free guide. So again, if you just head to stormlily.com/money, you can get it. Or of course, I will have it on the show notes for the episode. All right, I'm so grateful that you joined me here. And if you have a friend that you think needs to hear this conversation, do me a favor, share the link to this episode. Let them know that this is for them. And then stay tuned because, of course, I've got some more great podcast episodes coming at you in the next few weeks. Have an amazing day, friends.